The rain pounded the roof of the old bus, its rhythm a relentless reminder of the life Clara was leaving behind. At 19, she sat alone in the back, clutching a worn leather satchel, her only possession besides the faded dress she wore. Her heart raced as the bus lurched toward a future she hadn't chosen, a future decided by her desperate parents, who, drowning in debt, had bartered her to a man she'd never met. A farmer, they said. A lonely man in his 40s, living in a remote valley, who needed a wife. Clara's innocence, her untouched youth, was part of the deal, a cruel transaction sealed with a handshake. As the bus screeched to a stop at the edge of a muddy road, she stepped into the storm, her shoes sinking into the earth, and whispered to herself, "What have I been given to?" The valley was a world apart from the bustling town Clara had known. The air smelled of damp soil and pine, and the only sounds were the distant bleating of sheep and the howl of wind through the hills. Her new home was a weathered farmhouse, its paint peeling like old skin. Standing in the doorway was Elias, the farmer. He was tall, with a face carved by years of solitude and sun, his eyes a stormy gray that seemed to hold secrets. He didn't smile, but his voice was gentle as he said, "Come in, Clara. You'll catch your death out there." She hesitated, her heart pounding with fear of what this man might expect, what he might demand. The rumors in her town had painted him as a recluse, a man who spoke little and trusted less. Yet, as she stepped inside, she noticed the warmth of the fire, the smell of fresh bread, and a small vase of wildflowers on the table, details that clashed with the monster she'd imagined. The first weeks were a dance of silence and caution. Clara kept her distance, sleeping in a small room with a creaky bed, her door locked each night. Elias never pushed, never demanded. He rose before dawn, tending to his sheep and fields, leaving her simple tasks, knead the dough, mend the linens, feed the chickens. But Clara, raised in a home where love was scarce and survival was everything, didn't know how to trust this quiet man. She watched him, waiting for the moment his kindness would crack, revealing the cruelty she'd been taught to expect. At night, she lay awake, haunted by her mother's parting words, "Do what he asks, Clara. It's your duty now." The weight of her virginity, a bargaining chip in her parents' deal, felt like a chain around her soul. One morning, as Clara churned butter in the dim kitchen, Elias returned early, his hands scratched and bloodied from repairing a fence. She froze, expecting anger, but he only sighed and sat at the table, wrapping his wounds with a rag. "You don't have to be afraid of me," he said, his voice low but firm. "I didn't ask for this either." The words hung in the air, a confession that cracked the wall between them. Clara's throat tightened. "Then why did you agree?" she whispered. Elias looked at her, his eyes softening. "Your father said you'd have no future otherwise. I thought, maybe I could give you a home. Not a cage." For the first time, Clara saw not a captor, but a man as trapped by circumstances she was. Their fragile trust grew slowly, like a seedling in rocky soil. Elias taught her the rhythms of the farm, how to shear a sheep, how to read the clouds for rain. Clara, in turn, began to share pieces of herself, her love of stories, her childhood dreams of seeing the ocean. But the shadow of their arrangement lingered. The townsfolk, miles away, whispered about the poor girl given to the strange farmer. Clara heard the rumors on rare trips to the market, their pitying glances burning her skin. She wanted to scream that Elias hadn't touched her, that he treated her with a respect she'd never known. But shame kept her silent, and the weight of her untouched body grew heavier, a reminder of the transaction that defined her. The turning point came in the dead of winter, when a blizzard trapped them in the farmhouse for days. The cold was merciless, creeping through the walls, and the sheep were at risk in the barn. Clara watched Elias brave the storm daily, his face gaunt with exhaustion. One night, as he stumbled in, half frozen, she couldn't stay silent. "You'll kill yourself out there," she said, her voice trembling. He looked at her, surprised, and for the first time, she saw vulnerability in his eyes. "They're all I've got," he said. "Except you." The words struck her heart, and without thinking, she reached for his hand, her touch a quiet promise. That night, they talked until dawn about his years of loneliness, her fears of being owned, and the fragile hope they might build something real, but the world outside wasn't kind to their fragile bond. When spring arrived, Clara's parents appeared, demanding payment for the debt Elias hadn't yet settled. They saw Clara's growing strength, her confidence, and mistook it for defiance. "You're his now," her father spat. "Act like it." The confrontation shattered Clara's fragile peace. She fled to the hills, sobbing, her heart torn between the life she was building and the chains of her past. Elias found her at dusk, sitting by a stream, her face streaked with tears. "You don't belong to them," he said fiercely. "Or to me. You're free, Clara. Always were." His words unlocked something in her, a fire she'd buried under years of fear. Clara made a choice. She returned to the farmhouse, not as a pawn, but as a woman claiming her life. She confronted her parents, her voice steady as she declared she'd stay with Elias, not because she was given, but because she chose to. The townsfolk were stunned when they saw her at the market, no longer the timid girl but a woman with purpose, working alongside Elias, their partnership a quiet defiance of the rumors. What shocked them most wasn't what Elias had done to her, but what he hadn't. He'd given her freedom, respect, and a chance to become herself. Years later, Clara stood before a crowd at a town festival, her voice clear as she told her story. The YouTube video, uploaded by a local journalist, captured every word, every tear, every smile. "I was given away," she said, "but I found myself. And I found a home, not in a place, but in someone who saw me as more than a bargain." The video ended with Clara and Elias, now partners in every sense, their farm a haven for others seeking refuge from their own storms. The comments flooded in, inspiring, heartbreaking, beautiful. Viewers wept, cheered, and shared her story, moved by the truth that love isn't possession, it's liberation. Clara's journey, from a terrified girl to a woman who reclaimed her life, left a message that echoed far beyond the valley. You are not defined by what others take from you, but by what you choose to build. And in that choice, you can shock the world.